Women in combat arms and line infantry units is a grave mistake and a negative force multiplier in our military today. As many of you may know, political correctness has run rampant in the United States military. This video will explore how the United States military went from one of the world's most powerful militaries to falling behind other superpowers by deteriorating standards and allowing bureaucrats to determine policy. Our enemies do not share our concern for political correctness, and nations like Russia and China will not lower standards for affirmative action. All male units will continue to be the standard for the Russian Federation and China in order to secure battlefield superiority. Wars are often won by inches and split-second decisions. Anything that does not add to the effectiveness of the individual fire team is a potential liability. The introduction of women into combat arms is a national security crisis. Close-quarter combat is ruthless and not everyone walks away with a participation medal. Women and men are separated in sports leagues from a young age for a reason. Unfortunately, this is not a game and the stakes are infinitely higher than field goals and touchdowns. These policy changes will ultimately cost lives. It is advised that potential recruits think twice before signing up to serve in today's politically correct military. Women bring problems armies have avoided for thousands of years. Among these are sexual relationships within the ranks, reduced standards to accommodate women, higher injury rates among female service members, excessive cost to the taxpayer, and an overall reduction in unit cohesion. The origin of these policy changes date back to January 2013, when then-President Barack Obama and Defense Secretary Leon Panetta removed the 1994 restriction on women serving in direct action roles and gave all military branches until January 2016 to ask for an exemption. Despite the fact few women even wanted to serve in this type of capacity, this was largely a political move. The implications of this policy change were initially met with resistance by the United States Marine Corps. In light of the policy changes, the United States Marine Corps conducted a study trying to understand how gender integration would affect combat readiness and found that all male units were faster, more lethal, and able to evacuate casualties in less time. All male squads and teams outperformed those that included women on 69% of the 134 ground combat tasks evaluated. In one event which required scaling an 8-foot wall obstacle, researchers wrote, male Marines would throw their packs to the top of the wall, while female Marines required regular assistance to do the same. During simulated casualty evacuations involving a 200-pound dummy, mixed gender groups were notably slower at the task, except in cases when a single Marine would move the dummy using a fireman's carry. And in those cases, it was most often a male Marine who evacuated the casualty, according to the findings analysis. High injury rates among women were also a problem at the Infantry Training Battalion, the Marines' basic infantry training school for enlisted troops temporarily opened to women between 2013 and 2015. Researchers found that female ITB participants were injured at more than 6 times the rate of male participants, and nearly 1/3 of their injuries occurred during movement under load tasks, while just 13% of male injuries did.
We have the results this morning of a one-of-a-kind Marine Corps experiment that will help determine the future of women in combat. The study compared men and women fighting side by side. The final report released yesterday says men performed significantly better and got hurt less often. Jan Crawford is in Washington with the story. Jan, good morning.
Well, good morning. You know, we spent several days in the California desert back in March watching this experiment, talking to the men and women who volunteered, and now the results are in. And for those arguing that women should be able to perform all the same combat jobs as the men, the news is discouraging. It was as close to war as you could get. An unprecedented scientific study. Men and women enlisted Marines side by side for months of simulated battle.
6.
And throughout, researchers watched and recorded their performance to help determine what impact women would have on combat. Even then, the women realized they were at a disadvantage.
It's not that we can't carry the weight, we can carry the weight, but it's the pace, especially when we're matched up with the males. You're looking at our size and we have males that are almost 6 foot with longer strides, and it's hard to catch up with them and keep up with them.
That is what the results show. In almost every area, the all-male units performed significantly better than those with both men and women Marines. The men were faster in each tactical movement, had better accuracy, and were quicker. They registered more hits on target and had a noticeable difference in their performance of overcoming obstacles and evacuating casualties.
The Marine Corps also opened its infantry officer course to women, and after countless attempts by female candidates, the results were clear. No women had passed the infantry officer course by the end of the experiment. Several reports indicated female candidates had difficulty completing evaluated hikes under sustained loads and difficulty with the combat endurance test. Please remember this, as we will revisit this issue later. For now, we will turn our attention to the United States Army and its coveted Ranger School, which was also under heavy pressure from the Obama administration to graduate a woman from the course at all cost. The results of the Ranger School experiment were very similar to that of the Marine Corps. Women could not keep up with the men and virtually had an effective failure rate of 100%. The social engineers in the Obama administration anticipated this and had plans to take action, as women graduating from Ranger School was a key part of the Obama administration's plans to weaken American ground forces. We will now read excerpts from an article written for People magazine regarding exactly what went down at Ranger School according to eyewitness accounts. Way back in January, long before the first women attended the Army's elite Ranger School, one of the most grueling military courses in the world, officials at the highest levels of the Army had already decided failure was not an option, sources tell People. A woman will graduate Ranger School, a general told shock subordinates this year while preparing for the first females to attend a gender-integrated assessment of the grueling combat leadership course starting April 20, sources tell People. At least one will get through. That directive set the tone for what was to follow, sources say. It had a ripple effect at Fort Benning, where Ranger School is based, says a source with knowledge of events at the sprawling Georgia Army post. Even though this was supposed to be just an assessment, everyone knew. The results were planned in advance. On Tuesday, People revealed that Oklahoma Republican Representative Steve Russell had asked the Department of Defense for documents about the women who attended Ranger School after becoming concerned that the women got special treatment and played by different rules, sources say. Ranger School consists of 3 phases: Benning, which lasts 21 days and includes water survival, land navigation, a 12-mile march, patrols, and an obstacle course; mountain phase, which lasts 20 days, and includes assaults, ambushes, mountaineering and patrols; and swamp phase, which lasts 17 days and covers waterborne operations. But whereas men consistently were held to the strict standards outlined in the Ranger School's Standing Operating Procedures Handbook, sources say, the women were allowed lighter duties and exceptions to policy. Multiple sources told People. Women were first sent to a special 2-week training in January to get them ready for the school, which didn't start until April 20. Once there, they were allowed to repeat the program until they passed, while men were held to a strict pass/fail standard. Afterward, they spent months in a special platoon at Fort Benning getting, among other things, nutritional counseling and full-time training with a ranger. While in the special platoon, they were taken out to the land navigation course, a very tough part of the course that is timed on a regular basis. The men had to see it for the first time when they went to the school. Once in the school, they were allowed to repeat key parts like patrols, while special consideration was not given to the men. A 2-star general made personal appearances to cheer them along during one of the most challenging parts of the school, multiple sources tell People. The end result: 2 women first LTS, Kristen Griest and Shay Haver, graduated August 21, along with 381 men, and are wearing the prestigious Ranger tab. Griest was surprised they made it. "I thought we were going to be dropped after we failed Darby part of Benning the second time," Griest said at a press conference before graduation. "We were offered a day 1 recycle. As you recall, former Army infantry officer and Ranger School graduate Steve Russell was highly concerned regarding what truly went down at Ranger School. Russell served 21 years in airborne, light, and mechanized assignments and served more than 7 years overseas and deployed operationally to Kosovo, Kuwait, Afghanistan and Iraq. After Congressman Russell contacted the Secretary of the Army on September 15, 2015, and requested the Ranger School records for Captain Kristen Griest and First Lieutenant Shay Haver, what would follow was an obvious cover-up. The Secretary of the Army stalled Russell for 9 days and then asked for an extension to obtain documents readily available. The Army waited another 2 weeks to tell Russell the documents had been shredded. With 2 female Rangers, the Obama administration finally had the political dog whistle it needed. After millions of dollars of taxpayer-funded research, Defense Secretary Ashton Carter decided to go against the evidence and formally removed the restriction on women serving in frontline combat. Only Joseph Dunford, Commandant of the Marine Corps, requested an exemption. United States Army Chief of Staff General Mark Milley decided to throw his soldiers under the bus by embracing political correctness. But at least we could rely on our commanders to never ever lower the standard. Or could we? Within the next several months, political correctness would transform the world's most powerful military into a force for radical feminization. As you recall, we told you to remember the experiment at the Marines Infantry Officer course. Here is why. Ultimately, General Robert Neller would cave to political pressure and would lower the standards from requiring the successful completion of 5 evaluated combat hikes to 3 evaluated combat hikes. The combat endurance test was also formally removed to make it easier for women to complete the course. What is interesting about this is General Robert Neller, now Commandant of the Marine Corps, made these changes under the administration of President Donald J. Trump and Secretary of Defense James Mad Dog Mattis. It would appear that the Trump administration and James Mattis has no plans to reverse course. Here is an excerpt from former infantry officer and now Senator Tom Cotton questioning General Robert Neller about the reduction of standards.
General Neller, I want to speak to you about some changes in foot march standards at the infantry officer course. It was recently changed from requiring infantry officers to pass 5 out of 6 evaluated foot marches to only 3 evaluated foot marches. I find that a little worrisome, given that the overall physical fitness testing standards have increased for everyone to include enlisted Marines, which means we may be lowering standards for our infantry leaders compared to our enlisted Marines on something that is, I would say, a pretty core competency for an infantry leader. I assume you would agree with that?
Well, Senator, there was a change because we looked back at what was going on at infantry officer course. There's 9 foot moves during the course of that curriculum. At one time, you had to pass 5 of 6 to graduate. A couple of those 6, we could not relate them to events in the training and requirements manual for infantry. So I got a group of my senior infantry leaders together and I said, okay, why are we doing what we're doing? A couple of them, the one in particular, an event, I thought that the load was I wouldn't think I would ever have anybody do that. So they came back to me and they said, look, these are the three that equate. We're still doing all of them. They're still all done. They're all still part of the overall
But
evaluation.
fewer are being evaluated.
They're all evaluated.
We're evaluated as a
They're
graduate.
all evaluated, and overall, as the performance of that officer to graduate from that course. But three of three now, to include the one with the heaviest load and the time and duration, those three all have to be passed in order for an officer to graduate from that course.
Let me just read you a statement from General Boehm, the commanding officer of the Marine Corps Training Command. He said, quote, "The principal driver behind us making modification of the course, it was not about lowering attrition, it was about making students more successful to complete the course." I don't really understand the difference between lowering attrition and making students more successful to complete the course. Both of those sound like you're tailoring the standards not to the mission, but to the graduation rates that you have at the course.
I'm not going to speak for General Boehm, but my view is when I was approached with this, says this is what we can equate to training and requirements manual for the infantry. These are the three that we should evaluate as go or no go for graduate from the course, and that's what we did.
We will now discuss the single biggest issue that integrating women into frontline units bring. This issue triumphs all others and few have objectively thought about the consequences. While everyone naturally has concerns with the ability of women to physically hold up in combat operations, this is far from the only potential problem that can arise. Few have asked the far more serious question regarding sexual distraction and human nature. It is no mystery that mixing 18 and 19-year-old boys and girls together brings sex. Anyone who thinks otherwise is an idiot. It is not a matter of if sexual relationships can come about, it is a fact. They will absolutely happen and will lead to casualties. The high stress of combat will make sex a tempting release. Jealousy will arise and lead to a reduction in unit cohesion. Imagine a football team fighting over a cheerleader. The sad reality is these type of distractions will end up in body bags returning home. Israel found this out firsthand. It is a common misperception that Israel allows women in combat units. In fact, women have been barred from combat in Israel since 1950, when a review of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War showed how harmful their presence could be. The study revealed that men tried to protect and assist women rather than continue their attack. As a result, they not only put their own lives in greater danger, but also jeopardized the survival of the entire unit. The study further revealed that unit morale was damaged when men saw women killed and maimed on the battlefield. Few serious armies use women in combat roles. Israel, which drafts most of its young women and uses them in all kinds of military work, has learned from experience to take them out of combat zones. There is also the issue of rape on the battlefield by enemy soldiers and by fellow service members. President Donald J. Trump once tweeted on the huge issue of sexual assault in the military years before he became president. Pregnancy is another issue that will happen when men and women are sharing close quarters together. Separate facilities for men and women will not be able to be constructed very easily in an active war zone. And if they can be constructed, it will be at the expense of the taxpayer. This is a very dangerous situation. You cannot reprogram biology. A man is a man, and a woman, no matter what the feminist Nazis say. We will now explore two known documented cases that have already reached the headlines of sexual relationships emerging in infantry units. One such example is a Corporal Remedios Cruz, who ironically is one of the first female infantry Marines. Her career has come to an end after she admitted to having a romantic relationship with a Marine under her command, whom she later married. Corporal Remedios Cruz has been reduced in rank from sergeant and will be separated from the Marine Corps per an agreement negotiated with prosecutors that allowed her to avoid a court-martial on charges of fraternization, adultery, and accessory to larceny. The second such case is when a company first sergeant first class Chase Usher, who had been serving as the top non-commissioned officer of B Company, 2nd Battalion, 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 3rd Brigade Combat Team, of the 82nd Airborne Division. Had sex with one of the first female infantry soldiers who reported to his unit. What is shocking about these cases is these are among the first women to arrive and be integrated into combat units. It did not take much time at all, for biology and human nature to damage unit cohesion. The Army has decided to protect the identity of the female soldier. Disciplinary action was deemed appropriate by the chain of command and was taken against both individuals and has been completed according to Lieutenant Colonel Ramon Osorio. The division spokesman said both continue to serve within the division. However, the first sergeant was relieved of his position and currently serves on the staff of a different unit. These type of distractions will continue to happen at great peril to the national security interests of the United States. To make matters worse, women are not required to cut their hair, which creates a massive double standard and resentment in the ranks. While this policy is acceptable in the general military, it is entirely unacceptable and should not be tolerated in frontline infantry. Enemy soldiers will use this to their advantage should the fight get up close and personal. The United States military has even gone as far as to make gender-specific accommodations for their gear, even down to tweaking protective equipment to fit around longer hair. All of this at great expense to the taxpayer. Women will also be easily identified by enemy snipers. It does not take much mental effort to see where a sniper will strike to inflict maximum damage and chaos.
Together, discipline and sacrifice make you take the time to assess your target, check and recheck the conditions and the opposing forces. They let you see all of the available options. When you have no choice but to get it right the first time, there is zero room for error. Everything has to be timed perfectly. Every condition has to be accurately assessed, and every contingency has to be accounted for before you send it. Perfect.
Long hair also has the potential to interfere with the use of gas masks during biological and chemical warfare. Ignoring reality will not make our country any safer. There is also the issue of feminine hygiene issues that further reduce combat effectiveness. In small units and on special operations, women behind enemy lines has the potential to attract enemy search dogs, compromising the mission. Small teams of special operators could be miles behind enemy lines for weeks on end, with virtually no access to running water and with limited food. It is well documented that canines can detect human menstruation cycles. This is a highly compromising situation and will lead to American soldiers being killed or captured behind enemy lines. Please take a moment to reflect on these implications. We have covered a lot in this video, but we have only scratched the surface. Ultimately, it will be up to the administration of Donald Trump and Secretary of Defense James Mattis to reverse course. One day we could again find ourselves in a conflict. You could have imagined. James Mattis, it is time to do what is right. Reverse all the decisions made under President Barack Obama. Close all schools and military occupations to women relating to direct action. Marine ITB, IOC, the Army's Infantry Basic Officer Course, Ranger School, and Infantry 1 Station Unit training must be closed. Under no circumstances should men and women be training and fighting together side by side. Esprit de corps must once again become the doctrine of the day. Many have sounded the alarm and told the truth even under great pressure. We thank you.
So if we look at anything we're contemplating doing, does it make us more lethal? If the answer to that is do it, or is yes, then do it. If the answer to that is no, clearly don't do it.
Members of the infantry, armor, artillery, and special operations community, do not stand idly by. Write your congressman and spread the truth. Share this video with your fellow service members. Fight the social justice warriors at every corner. Thank you all for your service, and God bless the United States of America.